ideas to be brought to bear?
No, I think I do see the opportunity clearly for us to rethink the way this place is governed. I've always said, one of the things we've done quite well in our democracy, we appear to have done well alternating power and doing, what we call the rules of entry and exit, how you get into politics, how you get out, term limits, all those things. I think we've routinized that fairly well. Where I think we still are missing something is what I call the rules of play, how we actually govern once you have power, right? And I think there is where we have a problem. And so for me, of course, not every problem requires a constitutional solution, but I do believe that to the extent that the Constitution is what frames our politics and what really creates the incentives and disincentives within the governance space, that if we really want to change the way this place is governed, which is how I understand reset, if you want to change the way this place is governed and you want to change the outcomes, then it is important to look at the Constitution as well. So I do think we have, at least in my generation, maybe the opportunity of a generation for us to do something about this, to change course. Because I think we've done this, the democracy bit, we've done the entry and exit bit for some time. The outcomes haven't changed significantly, and it's giving democracy a bad name. So it may not necessarily be a democracy problem, it's just how we are governing, how we are using power, for what purposes we're using power, how we are structuring power and all of that. So I do think we have a rare opportunity to do something about it.
Prof, let's start by perhaps defining the scope of the work you've been asked to do along with your committee. What exactly is your mandate here? I was about to tell us, having explained the mandate of his committee to us and told us what the outcomes are that they are expecting, does he expect that once they make their recommendations, they will be implemented?
Well, we are a committee. Our report goes to the president, who initiated our appointment, and we have had occasion, we've had the opportunity to engage him as our first stakeholder. So 2 weeks ago, we met with him, we sought audience with him, and he granted it. And at the meeting, we informed him, we gave him an update of what it is that we've been doing since we were inaugurated, but also explained to him that the meeting was also a stakeholder engagement, so we wanted to hear from him, also as to what it is that he was expecting from this process, what are his own thoughts on some parts of the Constitution based on his previous experience as a president, as a vice president, as a minister, all of that. And in that conversation, but even before that conversation, I think the first time he gave that assurance was at our inauguration, that this was not going to be one of those processes that would gather dust, and that he was committed to moving on it. And he repeated that pledge at our meeting with him. I have no reason to doubt that this time around, we will see some reforms coming out of this process. Of course, the president does not hold all the keys. He is only one of the gatekeepers. Once we clear his barrier, we have to go to Parliament, because constitutional reform is essentially lawmaking. So it has to come in the form of a bill that is passed in Parliament. If it's a non-entrenched provision, the parliamentarians still have to pass it. So ultimately, it's the political class, the president, and members of Parliament who are the gatekeepers who would have to pass this. And if it's for the entrenched clauses, then it's all of us. We have to go to a referendum, put the issues to the ballot for Ghanaians to think through, and it's for us to accept or not. So, and even when it is with Parliament, I think it takes sustained public interest and pressure and engagement with the political class, because they don't represent themselves. They represent us, And so I think as long as Ghanaians are involved in this process, take a keen interest in it, follow it along the way, and stay engaged, I believe that there will be a political response to it. Remember that we're doing this in part because the president campaigned on the promise of reset. And the reset, which engendered a little bit of an interesting play on words, reset or upgrade and everything. And I think basically the victory for the reset idea commits the president to actually reset. And so part of the reset is resetting governance. If you are going to reset, we understand it to mean that the way we've done things in this place must change. That is resetting. If it's upgrade, it's something else. The reset one, and by a huge majority. And I think that he has the mandate and therefore the responsibility to make good on that pledge. So I don't doubt that this will lead somewhere. Somewhere good. How many of the proposals will see the light of day, that I can't tell. But I believe that if Ghanaians really do want change, they will get it. It's really for us to continue to stay engaged.
Since the president is a key stakeholder and you've engaged him, I want to ask you some questions specifically to the president. When the current speaker, said back then that the constitution cannot offer development and it must be reviewed, you wrote this on Facebook. You said, as I have written elsewhere of this constitution, it grants and allows our presidents far more power than a good president needs, and far more power than a bad president must have. In short, it does not hinder a good president from doing anything good that he or she desires to do for our country. On the other hand, a bad president will find in it all the gaps he could possibly need to underwrite his bad governance. In the end, then it is the bad workman that blames his tools. Do you get a sense of how much power the president wants to let go?
Well, this is a president that, let's look at it politically, right? This is a president that has but one term, this last term. So I think from a very statesmanly viewpoint, I think if for no reason at all, what does he lose? What does he stand to lose? But remember that even in 2019, when President Akufo-Addo proposed the bill to amend the constitution to allow MMDCEs to be elected, he was also giving away substantial power, right? Some of this power actually is burdensome. We should not also forget that there's a flip side to this. The president does indeed have disproportionate power. And like you just said, nothing good that you want done in this town can move if you don't get the attention of the president. And also nothing bad that must be stopped, unfortunately, can get stopped. So whether it's galamsey happening in the hinterland or whatever, it is to the president that we appeal. Why? Right? Because on his or her say-so, action can take place. So it is burdensome power. And I think that a good president must not like it. Why must you be appointing all the MMDCs in this town with all the politics involved, partisanship, how many CVs can you review? That so gradually you can see that they are relinquishing that power small. They have actually decentralized it. Let's allow our party people at the local level to take over. We're tired. So they do get tired of these things. So I think that there is a certain sense in which, just from the pure governance perspective, based on the experience they've had, nobody wants to be bothered with this stuff, right? So there is that. And there's also the fact that they know, you've worked this constitution before. Do you really think that these presidents go home and say, Charlie, these number of ministers, my house is besieged every day. If I can appoint a limitless number of people, they will all be on my case. If I got a constitution that said you could only appoint X, at least I can tell them, it's not me. I would have helped, but this one, the constitution I can't do it. So sometimes actually tying the president's hand is actually good for governance. It sanitizes the politics. It lowers the pressure on the president So because then you can refer to the document as a constraint. I cannot do this, unfortunately, because of this. So, in those respects, I think that it is, if you get a good president who is minded in this direction, they would be more than happy to give up some of the power. I really think so. But especially in this case where you are looking for legacy and, you just have but one term, what does it cost you? So sometimes when you're doing constitutions like this and you see, you're in this situation, one of the ways if there's a blockage, you can say, okay, it doesn't take effect until you've left. We allow you enjoy your small power for the 2 years, 3 years left, but it will take effect from this date. That's also one of the ways in which you might also take care of any veto that you might get from a president like that. But I think that, too much power cannot be good.
Yeah. Every suggestion about what we need to change in our constitution can be, in one way or another, directly or indirectly, linked to this idea of reducing the president's power. Would you say that that is pretty much the central problem we're trying to solve by reviewing the constitution?
I think it is one of the problems, and maybe you may be right in the sense that even the other problems could be said to manifest in the president having too much power. So there is, for example, the spatial distribution of power in the country between the center and the local is too lopsided, right? It affects municipal development, development outside Accra. There are too many of these districts that are not viable, and we've done all kinds of things, right? Some of them are structural, and you can look at them independently of the president's power, right? So, for example, the fact that Accra has X number of district assemblies, what is the city of Accra? If you wanted to really elect a governor in the city of Accra, you are talking about electing 20 plus, elect a mayor in the city of Accra. You are actually talking about electing 20 plus mayors. I don't know which one your mayor would be, but here. But that is not necessarily a problem of the president having too much power. But of course, the more of those districts we create, we enlarge the president's power because the president gets to appoint all of them. So there are some ones that are independent of the president, but they go back. So, for example, we're looking at the first engagement is on lands and natural resources. It's not a place you tend to think about when we're talking about the Constitution, but there is a reason why our Constitution includes that chapter. We are the former Gold Coast, we are a mineral-rich country, and so it's not surprising that there's a chapter on land and natural resources. And when you go there, the first provision you encounter, all minerals, all public lands in Ghana are vested in the president as trustee on behalf of for the people of Ghana. Is that the only way that could have been formulated? Right? Not really. You look at other constitutions that have similar provisions, they vest them in some other entity. Sometimes they vest it in the government, in the Republic of Ghana. But for us, that has been our tradition, and everything goes back to the president. Everything goes back to the president. So I do think that, yes, a number of the proposals that are coming through, the submissions that are coming through, have that angle, right? You cannot engage this process in good faith without really looking at the president's power, just the sheer quantum of power that the president has. But I don't think that is ultimately we can say that it's the end goal is to just basically deconcentrate power in the president. There are so many other things that even if we did that, because it cannot be, we're not about weakening the president's power. That is not the goal, right? Because you do need power to do good things too, right? You must have the power to initiate good things and work. So I don't think it's the ultimate goal, but yes, dispersing some power so that at the very least, you don't have a situation where the burden, the entire weight of running this country falls on the shoulders of one person. And if that one person is not minded to do the thing that you think must be done, then we all stagnate. So we cannot have a situation where just one person decides whether the country moves forward or backward.
So talking about the thematic clusters, you've mentioned lands and natural resources, where which article is that? Article 257 or something like that. You are the lawyer, so you can correct me if I'm wrong. You mentioned it vests all the lands and natural resources in the president. So whatever way he manages it, he has to be held accountable for it one way or the other, not just at the ballot, but in a different way.
Precisely.
So if he manages our gold resources, or she manages our gold resources in such a manner that we lose now and future generations are put at a disadvantage, there should be consequences for that.
Precisely.
Right? So that's the lands and natural resources. And in this area too, he's appointing the minister and all the sector
commissions
agencies
and the commissions,
and the boards and everything.
The Petroleum Commission, Land Commission, Minerals Commission.
So that comes to Kojo's point.
Exactly.
Now, when we go to decentralization and local government and chieftaincy, that is the next thematic area. The president appoints everybody. His policy is what guides how development is done at the local level. So in this year's budget, District Assembly's Common Fund is going to the local level. We have budgeted 100 million Ghana cedis to pay assembly members. Yeah. This, that. So Kojo is right. So everything. So if the president gets it wrong,
that's the problem.
It goes wrong. And another important area, public services and state enterprises.
Yes.
Why must we not have a better competitive way of choosing who becomes the CEO of this or that, must be appointed by the president?
Has that particular thing come up a lot?
Oh yeah. I mean, there are those who are interested in that particular cluster have submitted some interesting things. There are some interesting proposals that are coming through, including from institutes of directors and other people who have a professional kind of interest or expertise in that area, and they say, well, this is no way to govern state enterprises, right? But even the question of do state enterprises even fall under that chapter, that's also a debate. But yes, there are so many different areas, and you are right. In each of these clusters, when you go there, it comes back to the president, right? So the president really is front and center in every one of those places. I have to agree with you. Whether it's you can pick any cluster at all, you will still have to wrestle with the question of the president's power. Whether you are dealing with independent constitutional bodies, the mode of appointment. You go to the judiciary, mode of appointment. You go to so you go to the legislature, the president drawing his ministers from within that legislature, so that affecting the nature of, the balance of power between the two.
MPs being on public boards,
everywhere.
And same person has to have an oversight
of
on that institution
that they
the
are
conflict of
govern.
interest.
Unfortunately, that is why, so in a way, I think, there's a history behind why our constitutions have gone that way. Like I said, whenever we do democracy or transition to democracy from a military junta, whatever, we've been very concerned about restoring democracy, which we understand at those moments to mean restoring competitive electoral politics. So we have been very much concerned about what I call the rules of entry and exit, allowing political parties freedom to operate, making sure that we have elections that are free and fair, putting term limits on the president, all of that. That has been our preoccupation in moments of transition. I don't think we have seriously thought about, once that transition is over, how is the country governed? The answer to that question, as to that particular question, the rules of play, how the game of politics is played once you have entered it and exited it, I think we have always gone back to factory settings. So basically, we have always gone back to what is familiar to us, which is that in this place, the president decides. So we haven't changed a whole lot. If you look, you come from 1957, where I was prime minister, we shift to the president. you go from 50, 60 constitution all the way to the present, you see something running through, is that whoever it is that we give executive power to, we make very, very big, and everybody else becomes subordinate to that power.
So could you let's run through the 10 clusters: lands and natural resources, decentralization and local government and chieftaincy, public services and state enterprises, advisory councils, that is Council of State, IGP, Police Service Council, Prison Service, Armed Forces, National Security Council. 5 is independent constitutional bodies or offices. You remember our issues with the EC and related matters.
Right.
6, the directive principles of state policy and social and economic rights.
A big one.
7, political parties. 8, the political branches, executive and legislature. 9, the judiciary. And 10, miscellaneous, so discretionary power, dual citizenship, amendment procedure. I was looking for something specifically on education, for example. Free senior high school was big. It's been a big conversation in the past 8 years. Those who argue for it says the Constitution says we must progressively try to execute free education, free basic education, and progressive as we go. Why not anything specifically on education, or is under a different cluster?
Yeah, it would be under the directive principles of state policy, social and economic rights, and NDPC. We could have clustered this in many different ways. For example, we could have said anti-corruption. Yes, corruption is a big issue, so we could have said corruption is one thematic area. Social services, but we didn't want to move, even though we wanted to recluster the chapters. We also didn't want to move too far off from the chapters and create our own topics. Then coming back to insert them in the chapters would be difficult, right? So what we've done is almost everything is covered. Seriously, almost at the end of the day, almost everything under the sun, as far as Ghana is concerned and governance is concerned, would be covered. But and we can fit them in different places. There are some overlaps, where so with political parties, for example, assuming that your interest is in the monetization of politics, what can we do in reviewing the sessions on political parties? What can we do about that in that particular area, in how parties select and elect their officers and parliamentary candidates, how much money runs through politics? You can look at it from there. You can also hit it from the Electoral Commission side. So there are many different angles, but you can be rest assured that all the key questions and conversations that trouble us will get some space in this process.
It occurs to me that you talked about how the president was your first stakeholder that you engaged.
Sure.
It occurs to me that some of his ministers are doing work that will be quite directly affected by the outcomes of your work. The Attorney General is obvious.
Sure.
But the Minister of State for Public Sector Reform, is another.
Absolutely.
Have there been engagements with her so far?
Not yet. Not yet. We're only starting. And in fact, it's important that when we talk about constitution review, there are too many people who think, well, this is just about reviewing the laws and stuff like that. But we've done a lot of public sector reform. We've invested so much in public sector reform over the years. And it would be very important to basically speak to those who have been involved in that process. So definitely one of our targets when it comes to public services and public enterprises, we now have SIGA, for example. We want to talk to them. What is your view of this whole corporate governance system in the SOEs? The SOEs, huge amounts of resources run through these SOEs, these commercial enterprises. In fact, really, that is where a lot of money too is hemorrhaging in this country. So whether you look at it from the cocoa board side or GMPC, these are big hitters in the economy. And yet, oftentimes, when we're thinking constitutional review, they escape scrutiny, right? But clearly, we have to focus on them. How do we get a handle on this corporate governance problem, and it's not just corporate governance, it's also management, actual management. It's not just board and CEO, it's how they are run, profitability, what do they do with the monies, some of them are using, manage to do, corporate social responsibility of, some people's pet projects, We need to be able to husband the resources of this country well, especially in the kind of future we are facing in the global space. So, how we harness the country's resources and how we make sure that we govern every aspect of the state, whether it's economic governance, political governance, we govern every space properly in the interest of the people. Definitely public sector reforms, so we have to talk to them. Yeah.
How well resourced is your committee?
Okay.
Go straight to the point. Do we have money to work?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Have you been given the money to do your work? Is it enough?
We have a budget.
How far will it take you?
We've been given a budget. We've been given a budget. We are also independently raising money to support the work that we are going to do. We have accepted the budget that has been given us. We've been assigned an office. It's going through some refurbishment and resourcing in terms of furniture and stuff like that. It should be probably complete. We have hired, we have a secretariat, we've hired some bodies, researchers, a project coordinator, some admin staff to help us organize ourselves because we'll be traveling and all of that. And in terms of moving around the country, the president has assured us that even places that are not easily reachable, the Air Force plane can be made available to us to get to those places. So there have been those commitments. But at the same time, we know the state we are in. So we are independently raising some money. We've had some support already. I don't know if it's okay to mention. It's not.
It's very okay to mention.
So FCDO, the UK, give us a little bit of money. The Swiss embassy has been generous. There are others who have expressed interest in supporting us, including UN, UNDP, and then some private foundations, Open Society, for example. They will be in town this week. They want to talk to us. We've also had technical assistance from International IDEA, which is this body, intergovernmental organization based at The Hague. They do this, comparative constitution making. They've been advising many different constitution review bodies around the world over a couple of decades now. We had a workshop. They did a workshop for us on Friday for the whole team before we set off. So in terms of resources, we don't have a lot of money released to us yet, but we have a work plan that we're going to follow through. It's going to be funded as we go. So
if you get all the funding you need, when should Ghanaians expect to have your final report?
Okay, so we've been given a mandate to do and complete this in 6 months.
Right.
If we count the first month, which was used for organizational things, setting this up and all of that, if we take that out, it can push us latest into August. If we include that, end of July.
Okay.
So, and I think it's fine. The last processes took much longer. At least the first one took much longer, and I think we should seize the momentum. We'll make hay while the sun shines.
Love it.
And so I think the momentum is now.
Right.
The public interest is high, and we should. I think if we're able to give the president something by the end of July, latest end of August, he should be able to process this before the year ends, because he has to go through a number of processes.
You've been sending lots of questions through. Let's see if we can put a few of them to Prof. Ichkwesi Prempeh for you. Kojo has them. But just before that, Prof, let me ask about the controversial one, Article 71, and how people seem to feel, stakeholders seem to feel about it so far.
No, I think, basically, it's of course very much part of our work. I believe even during the election, the president took a certain position on it. And a constitution must be costed, right? We have to cost a constitutional document. Of course, we say democracy is not cheap, but it doesn't have to be needlessly expensive either, right? So where you think that the constitution is burdening the treasury, the national treasury, and there are opportunities to cut waste. Sure, I mean, we should look at all of those things, but also look at it not just from a waste point of view, but I think part of the conversation is also about equity. People are looking for pay equity, and they're saying, why are we spending so much of our scarce resources on only this small class of public officers, and then not looking at others. So there are a lot of different proposals around that, whether or not we basically stop this confinement of this stuff to certain officers, office holders, and maybe look at the entire public pay structure generally, and the like. And also, do all officers, do we have the right people on Article 71? Should we have Article 71 at all? So all those things are, and I think they are fair. They are fair questions to be raised in an economy like ours, where it's a very low wage economy. Ghana is a very low wage economy. And I think when people have a sense that we are spending too much on so few, it's something legitimate that we need to look at. Yeah.
All right, let's see if we can do a quick fire round of questions from our audience.
Questions and comments. Gloria in Tema says, "Good morning, Kojo." She's referring to me, of course.
Yeah, are you sure?
I believe, first of all, the ex gratia for MP should be scrapped.
Okay.
Also, the IGP should be appointed from within the police service, with a structure set by the police service, not by a presidential appointment. Same for the military and other institutions. Again, the CJ should also be appointed by the legal body based on their own internal rigorous processes. Finally, I believe Ghanaians should vote for the electoral commissioner.
Oh, wow. Okay.
All this, I believe, will prevent the political interference and improve our state institutions for the citizens to have confidence in these people.
Okay.
Now, good morning. Regarding the engagement with the constitutional review, will Ghanaians in the diaspora be allowed to participate, and how will you engage them? Will it be focus groups or community meetings?
Ghanaians in the diaspora, of course, we want their opinions, we want their inputs. We have a website that allows you to upload your memo, and even if you don't have a memo, you could send us your input some other way. So, constitutionreviewgh.org. Ghanaians in the diaspora, I'm sure, quite usually internet accessible, and that would be the way. But given the constraint of time and other resources, we do not intend to step out of the shores of Ghana to meet anybody in person.
Well, maybe we can advise them. We know the various groupings in the diaspora, so they can also get together, deliberate, and present their inputs as
That's
groups
one
and
option.
even
I have gotten a message from one such group in the US who would be happy to engage us online, so via Zoom or Teams or whichever channel that is available. We haven't decided on that yet, but yes, I think that alternative has been offered us too.
Some wants to know how the final document will be accepted, whether it's by parliamentary endorsement, a presidential assent, or a general referendum.
So it will come in at least two forms. There will be the non-entrenched clauses, which can be amended by a supermajority in Parliament. So 2/3 of MPs can, in a secret ballot, vote to amend the non-entrenched clauses of the Constitution. The entrenched clauses would have to go to a referendum ultimately, at which at least 40% of Ghanaians must have participated in that referendum, and must approve the questions that are put to them by at least 75%. So it's a very high threshold.
Yeah.
It requires huge national consensus. Definitely, if you don't have cross-party consensus at all, then you can't even start getting the 40%. Even the 40% may be difficult.
So beyond your final reports, submitting your final reports, are you going to carry out any activities in getting the national consensus? Because I believe once you are done, you want to get Parliament, you want to get the nation, or that will be left to the system to take care of?
I think so far that is not part of our mandate. Our mandate terminates when we submit the report, and I believe some other body then takes off from there. It could be NCCE, of course. We go back to civil society, and I'm sure some civil society organizations and media would be keenly interested in following the process along after our report is due. But there was a provision in our budget for a parliamentary liaison anticipating this kind of work. So it's possible that we will stay on a little bit to answer some questions, interface with Parliament, go meet the various committees and explain certain things to them. But I think I can see NCC, for example, handling a bulk of the post-report public education and mobilization.
If I had my own way, I would suggest that your mandate be reviewed to add a bit of the post-report submission activity.
Engagement.
Yeah, because if you give birth to a baby, you need to work with the community to raise the baby. You don't just dump it on another institution. I think you should do that. Now, more questions coming in. Noah in Kumasi says, this is my question. Well, it's the same thing. This is a different question. It says, in their work, if the consultations end and the majority of the population says the president who performs well in his first and second term should be given the opportunity to continue, or the committee admit it?
All right. Well, so
we haven't so far. I haven't seen any proposal to that effect. What I have seen when it comes to the term of the president is the length of each term, as opposed to more than 2 terms. So there is a legitimate question on the table as to whether we keep the 4-year term or we increase it to 5 or 6, or even some people are suggesting just 1 term of, say, 7 years. So that is definitely on the table, but the number of terms in total, I think I haven't seen yet anybody who wants to increase it beyond 2.
Well, there was a question here from Seth. We don't have enough time, though, I'm afraid. But he wanted to know what your position is on the current public service laws, which in his opinion are outdated. I guess you have talked a bit about that.
Yes. I mean, some of the legislation that impacts, the things we will do, we'll take a look at them as well.
Yeah. He also wants to know why so many of our laws allow for discretion. He says, for example, at the ports,
big issue.
Yes, fees on goods are charged based on the discretion of the port officer, instead of there being a measurement and prices attached to for everyone to be aware of.
We need to minimize the amount of public discretion that we give to officers. That's a huge area for both anti-corruption and rule of law. We really need to minimize discretion in this country.
Prof, as with every visit you pay to us, I wish we had more time. And you have to come back and give us more as your work progresses. But we certainly wish you the very best.
Thank you.
You need to let us know how we can help with the work of your committee, because it's for the benefit of the whole nation.
Thank you, Kojo.
Thank you, Prof.